Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts every single day. Rudo, Jesse, AJ, Meghan coming at you live on Hump Day. A decent amount of news came out around the hockey world today. We're going to get into some of the best contracts in the league in the NHL, but first we kind of have to cover all this news and maybe some of the stuff that we missed over the last week or two. Obviously, the World Juniors ended. Canada taking gold as you do, but they, almost about 3 millimeters away from losing it. But Mason McTavish decided that he didn't want to lose. So
I think that's an all-time great WJC moment, like a top 3 WJC moment ever.
Yeah, it's definitely a ridiculous highlight to watch.
It's honestly just a shame that it came in such a weird tournament.
Like, imagine a normal WJC, he makes that play.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, I mean it was awesome. Good on McTavish to have the awareness to have your head up and be aware around the net like that. Yeah, Team Canada, like you said, inches away from, I don't know, not winning, and then they win. It was great for them, for those kids.
How someone explain to me how hard it actually is to do that, because you see plenty of players are very good at redirecting pucks in a general direction, but how difficult is it to like completely stop all of its momentum like that?
I feel like that was more just like reactionary more than anything else. Like,
I mean, it's going in anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's just instinct. Right, oh, God.
Yeah.
He just got it.
Well, I was going to say, like, honestly, it's one of those things where the answer to your question is it's both incredibly difficult and not at all, because you're just swinging at it. Like, you see that exact same play happen 500 times in an NHL season.
And it just doesn't work. Yeah.
Most of them go right in. Yeah, just bounce right over your stick. McTavish, obviously, he got good enough contact with it to pull it out. Or keep it from going forward, but that was pretty wild.
Yeah, not much to say. Meghan, I know you're more focused on Sweden and Olausson, but did you watch the finals?
I did, and I was actually really happy that Finland gave Canada the trouble that they did, just because of the tournament that both USA and Canada had. It was hard for other teams to be competitive there with them, especially without Russia in the tournament, which I would have liked to see. It was just a weird tournament all around, especially with the upset to Team USA. But happy for Latvia also getting past the preliminary round the way that they did. I thought that, it didn't end in a fairy tale. But overall, it was a weird tournament. But I guess I'm glad that it was an OT ending for a gold medal game. I couldn't have asked for that to be any different.
I feel like the gold medal games in the WJCs have been good games like every year going back several. Like, I don't remember the last time there was like and I'm sure it was just a couple of years ago and I'm just not remembering it. But like, I feel like usually those gold medal games in the WJCs are awesome. Because I'm with you, Meghan. Like, seeing a good high-end gold medal game is a ton of fun. And Finland's WJC kids have been out of control last week.
They were great. Yeah, they're competitive.
They've been lights out for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
Which, can bring us to the other major international competition that's getting talked about right now, with the NHL more or less confirming that there's going to be a World Cup of Hockey in 2024, planned for February. So, kind of that Olympic break style thing in the middle of the season. There's some pretty interesting stuff with it too. They said they wanted to up it to 10 teams, maybe have even like a play-in type of round. Obviously the last one was a banger, but are y'all as excited as I think you should be for this?
I would replace the All-Star game with the World Cup every year.
Yeah, I'm with AJ. No, I'm so stoked. Like, I mean, was the last World Cup the last best on best we got?
Yeah, I think so. They stopped going to the Olympics before that, right? So
if it wasn't that, we maybe got one more since. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the Young Stars team though, it was kind of like
sure. separated them a little bit.
I don't know. Yeah, it kind of broke them up, which I thought was great. That collection of talent was incredible, and
and it was just like this really weird. Like you'll never run into that again, where there was like, I mean, the U.S. botched their own roster. It wasn't due to a lack of talent. Like there was, even with that young stars team, there was enough like high end elite talent to fill out Canada and the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
You probably won't ever get that again. That's like the only thing that's disappointing about knowing that they're bringing it back is that we aren't going to get a U23 North American team, because that team was like maybe some of the best hockey I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, that like you could put together a pretty good one. I know it would hurt Canada and the U.S., but like if we're talking about this in 2024, you could put Connor Bedard on that team. Forget Shane Wright and a number of other players,
and Logan Cooley.
Yeah.
I mean, that team was just like, it was just so crazy. I mean, McDavid, Matthews, McKinnon, Eichel, like it was just
Brandon Saad.
My favorite thing is that Ryan Murray was on that team. Like a legitimate D pairing guy for them.
Yeah, Ryan Murray, Seth Jones, Morgan Riley.
Yeah, Morgan Riley.
Yeah.
Matt Murray and net, Connor Hellebuck, John Gibson.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You think about all those good players on their teams in the NHL, but when you actually put them together, it's like, oh.
Right.
That's actually insane.
Canada's so hilariously stacked that they they lost the talent that they did, and it was just like, we're still Canada.
Ooh, so your one sees Sidney Crosby now. Darn.
It's a tough life.
The one thing I actually hope they do, because I liked it for I hope they do a Team Europe again for those smaller countries. Because I thought that made it interesting, because like there are some, like Latvia and stuff where it's like, yeah, that's cool if they have enough guys to put together a team, but I don't want to see them get smashed 10-1 4 times.
Yeah, it's cool for the guys who are from like Switzerland or France or Slovenia, like,
right.
Oh, Kopitar gets to go be on a team because a national team would not be competitive enough to justify it.
Right. So I hope I don't think they'll do the North America thing again, but I hope they do a Team Europe for those smaller countries.
I think it'd be tough too if they're going to increase it to 10 teams. There aren't 10 hockey countries.
Yeah. Which,
I mean, how would you break it up? Obviously, U.S., Canada. You probably have Finland and Sweden.
No, if I'm doing that, I'm breaking Canada into 3 pieces.
You're doing like West, Central, and Eastern Canada.
Yep.
What you mean if you're pushing it to 10?
Yeah. Break Canada, basically draw the same lines as the WHL, OHL, and Q.
Yeah. Do you just give Quebec a team basically at that point?
Well, doesn't that become Quebec and Ontario essentially?
You can't, but you'd have to separate Quebec and Ontario. There's no way you have them on the same team.
Yeah. So anyway, I would break Canada into 3 parts because I think that would be more interesting than watching another Canadian powerhouse just go and wax the floor with everybody. Where you're just like,
yeah,
cool. Like, yeah, no, let's get a little internal strife going on in Canada. Everybody says they're so nice all the time. Let's stoke the anger a little. So, how very American of me, I know. But I would do that, and then whatever, go into Europe and
Finland, Sweden. It's just assume that they have Russia. I know that's a more complicated issue, but
hopefully by 2024 that shit gets figured out.
Yeah.
So that's 7, and then
if you're not going to include Russia, no shot are you getting to 10 teams. Like,
it'd be real hard.
Yeah.
If you did a Team Europe after that, that'd be 8. Maybe you do like a Team Eastern Bloc instead of.
Is this counting Canada split up into 3?
Yeah, and so maybe you do like Team Western Europe and Team Eastern Europe or something to get to 9, and then you still need 1 more.
Germany done.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, they got a goaltender. They got a little bit at the high end.
Yeah, I mean they'll have Reichel and Stützle and Peterka and Draisaitl.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
they'll have Mo Seider on the back end. Like they'll be that's a team that could win a game or two.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, whatever. World Cup, I'm excited for it. 2024, that'll be a lot of fun. It'll be really cool when Meghan or Jesse gets to go cover it. It'll be sick.
It's so much better.
Go ahead.
For growing the game than the All-Star game because it's a global reach, and I feel like people rally around countries more than they do individual players representing in the All-Star game. So I think it's just a great idea.
This one right here made me, not think exactly that, but exactly what you're saying. Like, one of the biggest goals Nathan McKinnon's ever scored was on this huge international stage.
Ended up meaning nothing, but
right. Oh, so that sucks so much.
I guess you could say that about his two biggest goals in his career. Ended up meaning nothing. That Game 5 goal for the hat trick meant nothing, but boy, it was cool. Boy,
wasn't that neat. Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I hope they actually follow through on it. It's crazy. European and Canadian players, I feel like in particular, really, really, really embrace the best on best international competition and stuff. And those players really, I mean, like it's everything to them. I remember, who was it? There was a Canadian a few years ago, a Canadian player that did an interview that said he'd rather win a gold medal at the Olympics than a Stanley Cup because representing his country is like the ultimate, achievement and da-da-da-da-da. So I don't know. Hockey best on best is always just...
It's tremendous, man.
It's
it's tremendous. And that's why I want to bring Canada up. Look at all the great players that don't get to play because they're the 5th best center in Canada, and they don't make the roster. Like the last World Cup, like you remember, like Matt Duchene was their 4th line center.
Yeah.
And you're just like, dude, like
it's.
Well, I remember. I think it was the first Olympics I didn't go to. A bunch of teams or a bunch of sites were doing like mock rosters before we knew that they weren't going. And there was even a couple sites that were like, Canada could put together a B team that would probably finish like 3rd, maybe 4th in this tournament. And it's just like they're literally two teams worth deep at most positions, with the exception of goaltending for some reason.
So the thing that I really like about the best on best competition is it's a setup that allows the best player's skill to come out as much as humanly possible, because it's a bunch of teams that have been together for like 2 weeks, right? So it's not these super rigid structured systems that, I don't want to oversell it, but people talk about coaching the fun out of the game all the time when you get systems that are just super smothering and very tight knit compared to you get these international competitions where it's like, yeah, just go be better than the other team.
Right. Well, when you get to like, it really does kind of remind me of the old school, like when you think about like the Russian school of hockey, Finnish school, stuff like that. You just, especially for the Euro guys, I feel like you do end up seeing like, wow, a bunch of these guys from Finland play oddly similar. And it's fun to see them all, kind of get together and it just clicks because they grew up playing a certain way on international ice, and the programs, there's not as many hockey programs out there. So a lot of the guys went through the same coaching systems or whatever. And so, yeah, it's a great point. Well, you just can see these guys kind of thrown together.
Guys who grew up playing together get to play together again. Like it's like getting to go back to that. It's cool for them. And again, like best on best, it's an amazing showcase of your game. And the All-Star game, one of the reasons that it's not is how many good players don't go to that thing, because it's gotten so limited with the 3-on-3 rosters being that big that you have tremendous players who are not getting that opportunity. Like Devon Taves is never going to make an All-Star game, but that guy would be on Team Canada.
Yeah.
one of the Canadas. But it's like I think it's a great showcase for the game because they're playing hockey. They're actually playing the game. You know, they're not going super hard. Like they're not going to go 100% full bore all out because they've got NHL seasons to get to that they're in the middle of, with it being in February. But it's going to be a lot more entertaining. It's going to be a lot better showcase of the game because right now, if there's one thing that no sport truly has, it's a best on best situation where you get to see that actually come to fruition, where motivated players actually put their effort into it. Because like the Pro Bowl has been a joke my entire life.
Yeah.
MLB's All-Star Game stopped mattering sometime during my childhood.
Did it ever matter?
It used to, because you go back, you look at Pete Rose smoking the catcher in like 1978 or something.
Pete Rose is a different animal.
I get it, but like they played hard. They played hard baseball in the All-Star Game back in the day. These days, though, not anymore. Like the All-Star Games, are just not a serious like best on best, and that's where hockey has a unique opportunity to be like, these are the best of our sports offering, and they're going to go out and they are going to go hard.
Yeah,
and I think that would, and I think that's awesome and a great way to bring people into the game.
Well, to that point exactly, the NHL has also expressed, hey, they want to do one of the preliminary groups and play all the games in Europe. So they're looking to expand their viewership of it, not just here in the States and in Canada, but across the globe. So, well, and like we say this stuff doesn't matter or whatever, but do you remember when Landy was on that world championship team that for Sweden that won the world championships? Yep.
And they went back to Sweden and had a giant party to celebrate it. Like, the hockey countries care. Hockey fans are wired in such a way. We all care about the international tournaments. We all get in. I mean, that's where the knife fight really happens. That's where Z and I stop talking to each other. Because when it's USA Canada, it's a no-go. It's a no-fly zone for our relationship.
I like the more I'm sitting here thinking about it and letting it kind of resonate, I love your idea of splitting up Canada, because the rivalry that would cause within Canada, like that would be some of the best, like that'd be some of the most like electric matchups, crowds, like that would be wild.
Yeah.
I love that.
Quebec versus Ontario, you might get to like soccer hooligan levels of problematic.
There might actually be a knife fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you split up Canada at all, even if you just went like east-west, I think you'd need to be a little bit more like deliberate than that. But even that, I just think would, just the rivalry that would cause within the game, would be phenomenal. Great call, AJ. Great call. Love that.
Anything to add on the World Cup, Megan?
No.
Okay. The other news topic of the day is EA released at least their cover athletes for EA 23. I don't know if it's the actual cover, but Trevor Zegras and Sarah Nurse are the two athletes getting on the cover. I think a lot of people care a lot more about this than I do, so I'll leave the floor to you guys.
Well, it's not that I care, but I played those games all growing up. It's fun to see guys from your team get the recognition. I thought like it was a Cale Makar lock for this year, and I was like, oh, that'll be nice for the Avs. Kind of a nice little bow on what's been a pretty crazy season. Get the cover athlete, but I like that they did something different. Like they just kind of run it back so many times. So I like that they went out there with a young kid, Sarah Nurse. I like it. Would have been cool to see Makar, but meh.
I would say two things. One, I'm glad Makar didn't get on it because the EA curse is real. It's been like 16 years since a cover athlete has gotten out of the second round.
Well, I mean, that's now a pretty specific definition of the curse.
Look,
I will tell you,
not me.
The Madden curse sure as hell felt real for a long time.
That's what I'm going to say. Like the Madden one was one where it's like, your career unravels the next year.
Yeah, you're on the cover and you either, you either end up in jail or with a career-ending injury, and it was just like,
and
this is a lot.
If you're going to put Trevor Zegras on the cover, and you're not going to give me ways to do things like the Michigan or flipping the puck over the back of the net, you failed.
I know the Michigan was in the last one, and I saw a tweet. There's no way I'll come across again. It said, the Zegras is officially in NHL 23. I don't know what that is.
I'm assuming that's the flip over the top of the net pass.
Yeah.
Not 100% sure, to be honest.
But honestly, good for them for putting someone like Zegras, because they've always shied away from the young guys, and then good for them for putting Sarah Nurse. They put the women's international teams, I think it was last year, in the game. Long overdue, and so it's cool to see them continue to make that push and bleed it over to the cover.
If we could just get a consistent women's league
if the NWHL side and the what the PHF
is at
the other side,
if they could
stuff out,
and then we could add that into the game, I think that would also be awesome. But ultimately, I mean, I say this, but I'm not gonna buy it. I'm not gonna play it. I don't care. I think it's great. I think it shows why Trevor Zegras is super important for the NHL.
Yep,
because that kind of skill, that kind of showmanship, that kind of confidence, that kind of personality that jumps off the ice is rare in hockey. Because I mean, you look at Connor McDavid, and we can all watch Connor McDavid and be like, this dude is on another planet. But to a casual person, they're just gonna be like, wow, that guy's really good. But you watch Trevor Zegras do shit that nobody else even thinks of. And the way that he plays the game and the confidence, it's different, and it really separates him, the way that he plays the game from most players, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the attitude that he carries himself with. It's very anti-hockey establishment, where guys, the Brian Burkes of the world don't like a guy that has swagger like that. They don't like when a guy walks into a room dick first and is proud of that, right? Like, they're not into that. They want to hammer that out of a guy's personality the second that they draft him, and it doesn't look like Trevor Zegras is going to let that happen. And so I think he's a really, really, really important part of marketing the game beyond the fan base that already exists. I mean, you're always going to have the old heads who are like, but back in my day that he couldn't do that, and like, that sucks. Like, let the game be fun. And that guy embodies the fun part of hockey. And I'm all for it. I'm all for selling the game like that. As incredible as Cale Makar is, the guy's fucking boring. And Trevor Zegras just isn't. And I think that's where you're putting a cover athlete onto a video game. Cool. You're trying to cater to some people that may not be super duper into your sport anyway. Selling a guy like that, I'm all for it. Put him on the cover for the rest of his career.
Because Trevor Zegras is also, like, he's good content. Like, you see the Michigan goals and the flipping over, like, you see those on non-hockey related Twitter pages and Instagram pages and shit like that.
Right.
And so, like, people that don't follow anything hockey see those plays, those goals. That's why I'm happy that it's him, because in the past it's just been so much of like the rinse repeat, like you said, no personality, whatever. So good call for them on both fronts. I like it. I don't know how anyone could be mad.
It's a very non like hockey establishment thing to do. Even for EA picking a guy like Zegras, and then Sarah Nurse is included. I mean, she's incredible. And
that is what I have to say. It is historic to have your first women's hockey player, and let alone who Sarah Nurse is to the hockey community. She's not only women's hockey player in her own right. She's such a high caliber player, but she's also an activist and an analyst, and is such a good role model for hockey community in general.
And her brother sucks.
The superior nurse.
Yeah, pretty clearly.
Don't let that Edmonton Oilers account find this.
I'm telling you, the World Cup of Hockey, forget nation, all brother team. All right. Newhook, Comfer, Nurse, Kessel.
Yeah, I was going to say Kessel.
I'm sure there's plenty that I'm forgetting too. But
have we done an ad read already? Where are we?
No, we're about to.
Okay, yeah, do one because I've got another little side tangent thing.
We are brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. You can go get some right now for your gaming session on NHL 23 if that's what you're into. They're at your local liquor store anywhere in the United States. You can use the Breck Beer Locator online to find a specific flavor if there's something like the Strawberry Sky that you really want to try. The Palisade Peach one that only comes in stock in the summers here. Oh, it's so good. Highly recommend. Beyond that, they have an amazing website. Go to breckbrew.com and you can get a bunch of merch there. That's super awesome. Everyone loves their hats. So go check that out. And we're also brought to you by Avaca TV. That's EVOCA.TV. And go to that /Colorado10, avaca.tv/Colorado10 to get TV for just $15 a month for the first 3 months. If you're here in Colorado, it has altitude. It has AT&T Sportsnet. It's got national channels. It's got NFL Network. It's got movies. It's got TV shows. It's got up to 60 channels to cover all of your television needs. So basically, it's just as good as any other cable network or anything like that. And it's significantly cheaper at just $15 a month for the first 3 months and only $25 a month after that. So head on over there to avaca.tv/Colorado10 and get yourself set up with it today. All right, second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Jesse, where are we going?
Yeah, there were just some more official looking leaks of some shirts for the reverse retro stuff. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it does look. I mean, these were rumors that were put out there, but the Avs will be those old Colorado Rockies ones in Colorado flag colors.
Neat.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know why you guys get so mad. Like, people like this shit.
No, it's cool.
We're just not those people.
Yeah, I thought the Sharks.
Well, thank God
and the
we're not
Golden
the only ones that
Seals
listen to this
font
show.
looked cool.
Yeah, no, the Oakland Seals one's dope. I'm anxious to see what an Avs Colorado flag color jersey looks like.
I'm excited to it. I hate this like slow leak process.
Yeah,
just fucking do it.
Just tell us what it is.
It was
like it reminds me of like the NBA schedule this year, which they tried to turn into an event and became social media's most annoying thing for a full week because it was just like, dude, just release it. Just release it. This is not that big of a deal. Just let it fly,
also,
guys.
If you just release it instead of like a terrible leak of it coming out, and you hear the reception that this is awful, don't do this.
Right.
Maybe you can change it then.
Well, and like,
but they never do. Like they're never like, oh, back up.
It's because they don't release it until they're already printed, and someone leaks it, and then it's too late to fix it at that point. You got to release the design before you've even printed the jerseys.
How about just release the shit, but make sure that all of it is actually good? Boom! I have fixed the world.
Too. Yeah, see, this goes back to what I was talking about a couple weeks ago. Like, more like Adidas needs more people in the room. Like, no, that looks terrible.
Talk to 5 fans from every fan base before you decide on something, and then just go from there. And if those 5 fans just don't happen to accurately represent that fan base, well, then you had a bad day, and you move on. There's 31 others that you might have had a chance at getting correct. Like, seriously, just this whole thing annoys the crap out of me. Just do it. Do it well. Make good choices. Make cool shit. Let it fly into the world. Speaking of making cool shit, our Landy shirt, you know, the one with the holding the cup and all that. Yeah, the 8-Bit Landy. I know that people have been waiting for that. We want to apologize that it got delayed because the first print that we got of that was unacceptably bad. So it had to go back, and now that the new ones came in, they're all being sent out today. So it took a little while because there were some problems there, but that was actually not a bad design. It was just a bad job by the printer. So they needed to stop being bad. And once they stopped being bad, they did a good job, and now everybody's going to get their gear. So we wanted to make sure to also point that out, and that felt like the only segue I was going to have.
No, I got it in there. I think you nailed it.
Well, look, in a couple years, Adidas won't be able to make bad decisions anyway about the jerseys. So
I can't believe that Fanatics is still allowed to run this stuff, because it was them once again. They this morning uploaded all of the reverse retro shirts onto the NHL shop. So a bunch of people got on there, saw them, and this is like the third time they've done that, where they've accidentally put stuff that was supposed to be like a limited release. Because I'm with you, AJ. I remember we were all talking about this a couple years ago with when they were doing the new jerseys, when they were switching over to Adidas, and they did like 5 teasers for it. It's like, okay, we get it. There's new jerseys coming. You've built the hype. We got it. Check. Can we see them? Like, I'm with you on that. Just put them out. Put them
out. The announcement of an announcement is starting to get a little old.
Yeah, agreed.
Who was it? There was a hockey Twitter account. Something got leaked. It was Carolina or Anaheim. Something got leaked a couple weeks ago, and they just tweeted out like, "Well, you guys all already saw it," and they just like did their big release tweet like 2 weeks early. And again, just do that. If it gets leaked, just put it out there.
I will tell you, I am buying a Fisherman jersey. I am buying one. I will buy an Islanders jersey. I will get burned again, and I will be mad about it again. But I am buying one because that jersey is so sick.
Yeah, that's the shirt does have the Fisherman, and it's got teal on there, which I had originally heard they weren't going to do any teal.
Run a super chat promotion where if we get enough super chats, we will buy a customized Islanders Fisherman jersey with Tavares on the back for AJ.
Oh no.
And then
out promising.
After I open it, and then watch me strangle you with it live on air.
Yeah, that can be the live reaction.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then spike it into the ground and run away because the police are coming.
Yeah.
We do have to get into our actual topic of the day, which is the best contracts in the NHL. Now, we've talked about the most expensive contracts. We've talked about the best players in the league, but we haven't really hit that niche of the most cost-effective players in the league. Now, to be clear, you can't use ELCs. ELCs is obviously cheating. You always get absurd value on good players on ELCs. It's not fair.
Like even Alex Newhook is a great value on an ELC,
right? So
like, oh, you paid $900,000 for a 30-point player.
So not going to go there, but I thought this was an interesting topic because a number of the guys that were the best contracts in the league are seeing their contracts come to an end. Kadri's contract now over, now making $7 million. Nathan McKinnon in the last year of that contract, that was arguably the best contract in the league for a while there. You even see players like Jonathan Huberdeau getting that big raise that kicks in next year. So you're kind of seeing this changing of the guard on the players that are now the most cost effective in the league as far as, on the high end. And we've talked about it a lot, but we can start with Cale Makar. Are we talking about one of the best contracts in the league here with Makar, or is this just very good value?
So I think today, when you look at it, you remember when it got signed? It was the most expensive deal for a defenseman. It was a record for post ELC for like a second contract for a defenseman in the cap era. Just an absolute banger of a deal that had not been given out before. It's the 9th most expensive defenseman contract, and it's a year old.
Yep.
Right now, he's the 9th highest paid defenseman in the NHL. And keep in mind that in 4 years, he's won a Calder, a Norris, finished, I guess 3 years because that first year doesn't really count. It was just playoffs. Finished second in the Norris, and he's won a Conn Smythe. And the guys that are ahead of him, Roman Josi, you can get that one. Adam Fox, look, he won the Norris over Makar, so you can understand where they were coming from on that one. Darnell Nurse, what? Seth Jones, what? Charlie McAvoy's great,
but making more than Cale.
But making more than Makar. We'll go with a half what? And Zach Werenski. I understand where Zach Werenski, Columbus just had to keep him. So after Seth Jones was like, no thanks. They had to do whatever. But I think that Werenski, I don't have a huge problem with that. So I'll give that one also a half watt, but understanding some context. And then Doughty and Carlson, like those were generational guys from the last generation who were just, that's just how this works.
The inevitable end of the old man contract happens.
Yeah, exactly. Because those are the guys. They're both 32, as is Roman Josi. But you're talking about they're both in the 11s. Weirdly, there's no defenseman in the NHL at 10 right now.
You either make the jump to 11 or you're in the 9s.
So
yeah, I mean, Cale's deal is one that somehow, before he even played a game on that deal, aged really well from the time he signed it to before he stepped on the ice, and then obviously the year he just had, you feel really good about it. But yeah, I mean, just fully piggybacking off where AJ was just going with that, it was just interesting to watch. I remember us talking about like, ooh, wow, Cale Makar, they just kind of set the market for defensemen.
Yeah.
And then every other GM blew right past that number, like for the next 2 weeks. And it was just really interesting because yeah, he's got a Stanley Cup and a Norris now. But I mean, like even going into that negotiation for a player that was 2 years into the league, awfully decorated. And so again, it was so, that whole saga, it continues to be one of the more interesting kind of, I guess I don't know the best way to put it. It was just really interesting to watch that because again, it felt like a pretty consensus. He finished second in Norris voting. Okay, yeah, this guy's up at the very, very tip top of the league for defensemen. He gets his contract and you just expect everything to kind of fall in after that. Everyone to say, okay, well, here's where here's where you are kind of in relation to Cale Makar, but GMs just haven't had an issue going past that number. And again, before he even stepped on the ice and won a Stanley Cup and won a Norris Trophy and almost scored 30 goals, the contract somehow got better, and it's just continued to improve every day for the last year. So maybe it's not insane value, but it's not a great deal, but wow, it's great value.
I think it is great value because of term, because of what we can expect Cale Makar to become over the next several years. And I think it sets a precedent for other defensemen because Adam Fox's contract is so similar. It's so close in value for the AAV, but also the term. And I think it's modeled after Makar's contract, and it comes about only a couple months after Makar signs his. I think that's on purpose. It's completely a reflection of what this type of defenseman means for their individual teams too.
Yeah.
It's, you can never perfectly extrapolate term, right? You never know what happens in a player's career going forward. But especially for a player so young, where realistically you just saw him win all the things we talked about, and he's still 2-3 years away from being in his prime. Boy.
Yeah. Which again, why it was just so surprising to me that teams were so comfortable to pay their defensemen more than that for those exact two things. The Avs felt like, hey, cool, we think this is fair, knowing that you're still going to get better. And a guy like Seth Jones, who you feel is pretty settled into who he is, got even more money on even more term. And again, not all negotiations are equal. To the point AJ made about Zach Werenski. Columbus had to pay whatever they had to keep him.
They had to give the extra $1 million or whatever, because you can't make the argument that Zach Werenski was worth more than that. But going into his last free agency, basically, he was willing to stay. They had to make sure that he stayed. If that extra $1 million kept him, you're like, okay, so he's a little overpaid. So what? It's the same thing with Charlie McAvoy. I saw people in chat immediately were like, oh, he got an 8-year deal or whatever, and it bought all these UFA years. Like, look, the guy's overpaid today, just compared to the guys that are around him. He doesn't have nearly the offensive skill set or production or any of those things as the other guys that are in his salary range. He just doesn't. He's an unbelievable defender, and I fully expect he's going to be next to Fox, next to Heiskanen, next to Makar as like in this generation's elite guys. But as the complete two-way guy, he's so far in his career anyway, he's lacking.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't give a shit about that extra $1 million when you're talking elite defenseman. So what? But with Makar, yeah, like his contract, it was like $9 million, and you're like, God, that's a lot of money. And then you're like, given how special a player that guy is, and given what's happened since then, and given where we think the cap is going to go, by the end of that contract, we could be looking at that Makar's contract like we look at McKinnon's now, by the end of that deal, where we're just like, it made sense at the time, but my gosh.
I want to get back to some other Avs contracts, but first, Cygnus brought it up in the chat. Mentioned Leon Draisaitl. For Draisaitl, he's a guy we have regularly shied away from diving too much into on this show because, we're drafting the best players, but his defensive side is lacking, yada, yada, yada. But when you look at the fact that he signed for $8.5 million and has had 3 100-point seasons, kind of ridiculous, right?
Dude, it's insane value because when you look at where his contract was, the first year or two, you were like, gosh, that felt like a lot of money. Because the first year of that deal, he scored 70 points. And you're like, for $8.5 million? I don't know, man. That could be a little stinky by the end of this thing if this doesn't take a turn.
Yeah.
And it took a turn, and he's had... The only reason he hasn't had 400-point seasons is because they only played 56 games one year.
Yeah.
And he's still put up 84 points that season. He's been I would have to go back and actually look, but in the life of that contract, he has to be a top 5 point producer in the NHL, if not like second.
I think easily, yeah.
I like it because he's locked into that through 2025, and if the cap ceiling is to be raised at any point, it's going to age even better.
He's got 3 years left on it, and that's one where you're like, what do they do when that thing expires? Because you give McDavid the world. You don't give a shit. You don't think twice about that. You give that thing whatever he wants, right? But with Draisaitl, you're like, can you afford to have 2 $15 million players on your team?
Right.
Because as expensive as McDavid has been, and how it's kind of amazing that nobody has really gotten all that close to him before this McKinnon contract, which could get there. It's Draisaitl's incredible value here has been a huge boon for the Oilers. And they turned around and threw it away on Nurse. Like as good of the values they get on Draisaitl, they lose on Nurse. And that's where you're like, great value, what a huge advantage. And what do they do with that advantage? They wasted it.
And that's AJ, I'm so glad you said that, because that's something I mentioned it yesterday, or whenever we were talking about, prospect pools and keeping your team up near the top. If you're gonna, you're gonna have these value contracts like this, right? Like we're talking about Cale Makar here and how that could slowly become such a great. in order for them to truly be good value contracts, you have to do something with the savings. You've got to put that money to good use. Otherwise, you just have players signed for less than what they should be signed for, and who really gives a shit. And to AJ's point, that's, if you're the Oilers, you're an Oilers fan or whatever, you have to be disappointed with the way that they've invested those savings. And part of the reason why the Avs are, we're getting daily updates on what the players are doing with their day with the cup is because Joe Sakic and company did a phenomenal job making good use of the savings on, Nathan McKinnon, of what ended up being, a good value deal on Cale Makar, saying we're not going past a certain point on a guy like Philip Grubauer, grinding. It was a little bleak there for a minute, but, grinding with Gabe Landeskog to get to a number where they felt comfortable, but he felt taken care of. They've done a great job with their money where they've gotten savings. They've put it to good use. AJ mentioned it. I think it was AJ yesterday. They were able to go add at the deadline multiple players because they've been smart with their cap savings, and the Oilers have made some mistakes with that. And then the other thing I was going to say on Draisaitl is, for me, part of the other reason why that feels like such good contracts, the production relative to the dollar amount is out of control. And two, because he's not great on the defensive side of the puck, it's not like you're sitting like, we're paying $11.5 million for this guy to put up points. And so, there's this desperation for him to put up the points, because you don't get anything else from him. So I don't know. At that 8.5, it's a great contract, but again, it was all kind of doesn't really mean much now.
All right. We are brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. You can use code DNVR when you go over there to sign up for a new account. And right now, when you sign up and put a $5 bet down on any college football team, you get given $200 in free bets. You can take those $200 and go bet on pretty much any sport you can think of. It's a wild time, some of the stuff you can bet on over at DraftKings. So,
dude, I watched a whole hour TikTok live of people playing cap baseball in Japan, which is baseball in a gym using bottle caps instead of baseballs.
Is it like a full-sized bat?
Yes.
Wild.
Dude, those caps can do a lot of things when you start spinning them.
Yeah.
It was nuts to watch. I was like, how do they keep track of these things? Like, what if you lose one in the lights or something? Do you step on it later? Like, very interesting to watch. I don't know if it's on DraftKings, but we are always talking about obscure sports on the show, so I figured I would give a shout out to that.
I saw Whip Snake's jersey in person the other day.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, you're in Colorado.
That's tremendous.
You saw
I
what?
thought that was really cool.
That thing has to be like super limited. Like,
Whip Snake? It's that lacrosse team, because before Rudo, one of the bets was potentially on the Whip Snakes or the Archers. I think the Archers ended up winning that game too. Unfortunately, my feelings about the Whip Snakes were wrong.
I'm pretty sure I picked the Archers, so let's go.
Oh, okay.
Because you were telling me the Whip Snake is like worse than a gardener snake or something.
I think the Whip Snakes won then, because whatever it was, I got it backwards. I'm so sorry. And now they have fans wearing jerseys in Colorado. So
that was probably you. Megan.
You're welcome.
That was your influence. That was your influence.
Well,
yeah.
There you go. So maybe you'll find a new dope jersey that you want, because the crazy teams that you can find on DraftKings. Again, go over there, get a new account with the DNVR code. You can download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and bet $5 on college football to get $200 in free bets instantly. Again, code DNVR. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only, one per new customer, minimum $5 deposit and wager, $200 issued as 8 $25 free bets. Restrictions apply. See terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook. And of course, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. We are also brought to you by FOCO. So when you win some money at DraftKings, maybe you don't want to buy a Whip Snakes jersey. Maybe you want actual Colorado team merch. that's where FOCO comes in, because they have you covered with all the major sports teams here in Colorado, including teams like the Rapids and the Buffs. So plenty of stuff to get there. They got jerseys, they got pants, they got Crocs for your feet, they got hats, they got pins, they got bobbleheads if you're more of it in the collector side of things. So go check them out. Go see all their merch. You can use code DNVR to get 10% off over at foco.com. That's FOCO.com to check out all of the amazing merch that they have. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I see a number of different people throwing out names from the Avs in chat, and I'm going to exclude the McKinnon deal again because it's on its last year. By the end of the year, he'll be on a much, much more expensive deal, hopefully, with the Avs. But outside of Cale, who do you think has the best deal money-wise for the Avalanche? I've seen in the chat Taves' name, Gerard's name, and Logan O'Connor's name thrown out so far.
Dude, it's very obviously Devon Taves. Mm-hmm. He is, right now, he has the same AAV, which is tied for 77th highest amongst NHL defensemen, as Brandon Carlo and Brian Dumoulin. All right? And those are both solid NHL defenders. Brian Dumoulin looks like he might be taking a turn for the worse, but he's been a pretty good player. Brandon Carlo, we've talked about. He's a solid NHL player, has been for a while. Like a one-way guy doesn't give you anything offensively, same as Dumoulin, but really good defenders. Devon Taves is he's an elite defenseman at this point. He's a top 10 play. He's a top 10 at his position, and he's making $4 million. Like he's going to make less money this upcoming season than Philip Hronek is, and Connor Murphy and John Marino. Like, and he's gonna play on the defending Stanley Cup champs top pair next to the Norris winner, and deservedly so. Like they took the McKinnon deal and essentially recreated it in Taves. Like it's incredible value. It's one thing where you look at the Avs and you say, okay, but anybody could have done that with the McKinnon contract and blah, 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 blah. But they continue to get incredible value out of some of these mid-level contracts where, the Burakovsky, Nichushkin, the last couple of years, wildly outperformed the deals that they were on. Devon Taves is the ultimate example of this. Like, Sam Girard is on a great contract, especially if he returns to form next year and goes back to being the Sam Girard the one that we saw more often than not in the postseason, next to Josh Manson, where it was like away from Jack Johnson, he looked so much better, right? He looked like the Sam Girard that we've come to expect. That guy's on a great deal too.
People complaining about his deal make me laugh.
Right. I mean, $5 million, you're talking about a second pairing guy that should give you a minimum of 40 points a year, and gives you solid defense. He's not going to ever ascend to quite that elite level, but I mean, Sam Girard, that's a good player. $5 million for like 6 more years or something. Like for the length of it, that's what makes it so good. If it was $5 million for 2 more years, you're like, it's fine. But for how long it is, it's so good. But Taves for the even given that it's done in 2 years, $4 million for truly elite level play for a player that could argue to be making 10 on his next contract.
Right.
It's incredible value.
Well, and he's also again, and I you have to be careful the way you word this because he's a Norris caliber defenseman. I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm not saying he should win. I'm not saying he should beat anyone, but like he is in that tier of defenseman where his level of play is up there, in my opinion, with guys that you do put in that Norris conversation every single year. I really do think Taves is. I mean, that was one of the things people talked about this year with Makar. It was the same conversation we've heard about McKinnon with the Hart Trophy. Well, can he really win it playing next to Devon Taves? It's like when Devon Taves is that good, where people actually think that it could disqualify you from winning a Norris Trophy. not bad value for whatever it is, 4.5.
Yeah,
like you said earlier, he's going to be Team Canada defenseman.
4.1.
Even better.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. 4.1. Legitimately, he's going to be a guy that when he goes into his next contract, if there's not a 9 at the start of it, it's because he got to double digits. He's that kind of a value for them, and it sucks that he's been so good that he's going to play his way out of Denver. But it doesn't suck that a late bloomer is going to make $50 million in his career for a guy that didn't crack the NHL until he was like 26. Like, good for him, but oh my gosh, is he such an incredible value for the Avs? And that's where they're going to kind of need to recreate that with Bo and Byram, really, if they're going to keep this gravy train rolling of you can't just pay everybody and then be like, hey, they're all making what they should. You've got to have guys who are exceeding their contract value to consistently be there. But
that was only Taves' 4th year in the league.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Megan, are you in the same boat, or are you a Logan O'Connor fanatic?
Well, I like all of these contracts. I think Logan O'Connor's is probably more average by comparison, just looking at the value and the difference between what the contract is to the value the player brings to the team. But they all belong, I think, in a greater discussion, like starting with Girard's contract beginning in 2019, looking ahead at Taves beginning in 2020. The Avs front office made these investments in these players because they anticipated that they would bring great value to the team in the future. And it makes me feel better about the Nichushkin contract and how that might age, because we are right in the beginning stages of that contract, hoping it's going to age similar to how some of these contracts have played out. And Logan O'Connor's contract belongs in that conversation too, even though we're looking at lower value across the board. The hope is that the front office is making these decisions because they're investing in specific players, because Nichushkin's contract has kind of been compared alongside Kadri's, and, you know, why one over the other? What's the difference here? And I think it comes back to these things about how these are anticipated to age. And I trust in the Avs front office making these decisions because of what we've seen happen with Taves and Girard.
The O'Connor one, I mean, in January, you were looking at that like, oh, okay. And yeah, to your point, it cooled a bit there in the back half of the season, but I really like the Logan O'Connor one. I mean, that's just it's just because that's now a set and forget $1 million in your bottom 6 that you know you're gonna like what he brings. He knows the team. Like, that's never gonna be a contract that you are needing to get rid of, anxious to have come off your books. It's $1 million. And to your point, Megan, see the highest impact guy on the team? No, absolutely not. But I think Logan O'Connor last year at least was more than $1 million player. How much more is up to you. But, you know, again, it's another one where...
What would you put him at?
1.5, north of 1.5. You know, maybe 1.7 to 2, if you're a free agent, if you're a UFA. And again, to me, it's just another example of they had a contract where, again, maybe this is a player a little bit above what his value is, and they were able to put the savings to good use. He's an example of someone they were able to use savings on other contracts, to get him a little bit of term. Just another smart deal. And it's just, you don't have to worry about that guy in your bottom 6 for 3 more years. And it's just, I do like that one as good value, even though, like you said, Megan, maybe not as impactful on the roster. An important piece.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, the 3 years is certainly the real value of that deal is that it's 3 years and not 1, because if you look around in his contract realm, like, you're talking about Danton Heinen, Nicholas Aube-Kubel, Corey Perry, David Krejci, Pat Maroon, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. those types of guys. You're talking about guys who at this point, now Krejci's kind of the misfit there because of his situation, but those guys are all depth guys who are in the case of a Danton Heinen, that guy, he had 33 points last year. Him at $1 million is a big steal for Pittsburgh. But the big thing is he's unproven. He hasn't consistently done it in the NHL. It's the same thing with Abe Kubel, where you're like, okay, but when push came to shove, the team didn't even want to play him in the postseason.
Yeah.
Pat Maroon had 27 points last year. Belmar had 20. Logan O'Connor had 24. Yeah. So really, he's right in the range of where he should be price-wise. Because if you start to go up, you start to find guys in that 1.5 range who are actual really, really, really good values. Mm-hmm. Right where he is, but it's the 3 years that really separates for O'Connor that makes that contract as valuable as it is. Yeah. Because even if that guy rips off a random 30-point season, he can't get paid anymore.
Right.
If he has a 15-point season, if he has a 30-point season, whatever, you're completely fine with it because there's almost no way for him to underperform that deal. Yeah. At $1 million, there's almost no downside here.
The Avs have done an extremely good job with all three of these deals, Taves, O'Connor, and Gerard, in getting their primes, right? It's so much lower risk on these deals because of the age of the players that they got them at. And that's where you look at the Landy contract. The Val contract is better than Landy's in that regard. You get Val's 27, so you're very likely getting at least 3 really good years there.
Man, you sure hope.
If not, then that contract becomes a disaster really quick. But you see the Avs do a very good job of targeting that age of player and getting a contract that they're happy with.
Yeah.
Well, and again, we mentioned it whenever it was we were doing the prospect pool show. This is just another guy that you pulled out as a college UFA. You didn't, this player literally costs you nothing but money, not even a draft pick. And to AJ's point, because that to me, I'm fully with you. That's the big part of this is I believe it was a 4-year deal when they signed it. Was it 3? Is this upcoming year the first year of the new deal?
It is.
Okay. Yep.
That was kind of the risk of it, is that they gave it to him after 40 NHL games.
Right.
They were
and honestly,
here you go.
I think a lot of that was the bubble playoff run, where he came in and he was awesome in that Dallas series with all the injuries. But yeah, like I said, there was a point this last year where you were looking at the $1 million and you're like, did Joe Sakic do it again? Did you find a 40-point guy here? And then O'Connor settled back into what, we all kind of thought he'd be.
Yeah, he went 40 games without scoring a goal.
Yeah, right. But, to again, the point that AJ made a minute ago, with the kind of player he is, the way he likes to play, it's going to be really hard for you to feel like Logan O'Connor doesn't ever live up to $1 million deal. And you look at guys like Andrew Cogliano, Darren Helm, guys that you all really like, they're making 1.25. And we had the conversation earlier this offseason about when you are in this realm where you're trying to stay competitive as you can. Yeah, $250K doesn't really sound like much, but suddenly if you look down and your entire, fourth line is all making 1.25, well, then that's $750,000. You almost have an extra $1 million given away. So it's just nice that you have one guy there who, right in the range, but on the lower end, you got some term on it. That's a sneaky great deal for the Avs.
It's very appropriately valued. There isn't huge disparity in what he's making and what he brings to the table, but I think he values the fact that there's some guarantee for the next season versus a Cogliano or a Helm who have some uncertainty year into the next.
For sure.
Do want to open this up to the rest of the league too. Chat mentioning guys like Elias Lindholm, Michael Bunting's ridiculousness, of course, Mark Giordano, Ehlers, and Connor up in Winnipeg.
Elias Lindholm getting paid less than $5 million to score 40 goals last year is mint for the Flames. Good luck doing it again, but that is a deal that right now you're like, whoo! The Flames got a big one in that. If that continues, that's a big feather in their cap. Chat asked a question just about what do you think Byram's contract next contract looks like. I will tell you that was the big thing that I took away from the Noah Dobson signing in New York, because coming off the year that he just had, Noah Dobson, he had a 50-point season. I really struggle, as much as I like Bowen Byram, I really struggle to believe that Byram is going to put up significantly more or even get to 50 points next year.
Given that there's just limited power play opportunity.
Exactly. Like there's, I think that his postseason performance probably should push him solidly into the top 4 in terms of minutes. But with Taves, with Girard coming back to health, with having the balance between Manson and Johnson, and being able to have that kind of balanced defense, I don't know that he's going to get fed the kind of minutes to be able to put up those types of put up much more than the 51 that Dobson just put up last year. Dobson had a really good year. He's 22 years old. Him getting a 3-year bridge deal at $4 million, I think kind of sets the table for Byram, because that a similar type of contract for the Avs. Like, you'd love to get a Girard-like deal for Byram. But the reality is that Byram would not be making a very good decision if he took that, given the kind of potential that he has to take Devon Taves' job next to Cale Makar and be his running mate for their primes together, those two, because then he would be getting the kind of minutes to produce 50, 60 points per year. He would be getting the ice time and the opportunity and playing with Colorado's top 6 on a regular enough basis that he's just out there with all of their top dudes and feasting on points. So that's where I think that's the template where you start with Byram. You say he gets to 50 points. That bridge deal is a great starting point for everybody. If he wanted to do a long-term deal, you can't go into the 7 or 8 range with them, just given his lack of track record and the concussion history. But anyway, I thought the Dobson deal provided a nice marker to start.
And for those younger players too, Bill Daly said today, expect a significant cap increase after the 23-24 season. So
yeah,
you're going to see players shy away from taking those longer deals until that extra money opens up.
I mean, look, if the Avs offered him a 6x6 and he just said, "Hey, given my concussions,"
sure. I mean,
maybe
I'd sign it today. Maybe
this would be a great, and then by year 2 of that deal, you're probably like, "Oh my God, this is an incredible value." But I guess I just have a hard time seeing him take that. This comment in chat kind of makes me laugh that you expect him to get to 30 points at most next season.
Man had 17 points in 30 games this year.
And then followed it up with 9 points in 20 playoff games. Even if you extrapolate just his postseason performance to a full year, it's 37 points. So I'm just I guess I have a really hard time believing that 30 points. 30 points is like my starting point for what I expect from Byram next year. He's gonna probably play 18 minutes a night on a regular basis, and more than that on the good nights. So I have a really hard time believing that he won't outperform what he did last season.
Okay. Anyone else have thoughts on Byram or any other specific players that they really felt like are a great deal?
I'm good.
I mean, there are so many, man.
Yeah, we could literally be here for days.
Like, you look at a guy like Tage Thompson making just over $1 million and just dropped a 36-goal season. Those are the big, when you sign a guy to a bridge deal because he hasn't done shit in the NHL yet, and you're just kind of waiting for the breakout. That's where you find tons and tons of these deals. Troy Terry's another guy that you talk about where he's making just a little over $1 million. He drops a 60 point year behind 30 goals. Those are your most frequent, like, big money, like Jordan Kyrou, Robert Thomas, each of them making $2.8 million, and each of them have a 70-point season last year. So those are your most common big value deals are those young guys on bridge deals waiting to break out. There's so many of those guys in the league that outperform their contracts every single year.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's you could get into a whole nother conversation there. We don't have enough time to really dive into it of how effective can you be at giving players bridges to longer term deals and how that creates success for hockey teams or failure in some cases.
Honestly, you got to balance them. Like the Avs signing all their fucking forwards to 8-year deals all of a sudden is like, okay, you're really hoping this goes well in terms of aging curves. Like you guys are really, really hoping this goes well. And hey, for the first 5 years, it'll probably be fine. And then after that, Godspeed. But you really have to balance them. Like the smart play, going back to Byram, the smart play might be to bridge him because it just saves you money. Because if you do want to give him a long-term deal, you've got to give him the money that he maybe has not earned at that point, where you give him a $6 or a $7 million per year. And you say, okay, in year one of this deal, he's probably not a $7 million player. But by the third year, he's a $12 million player making $7 million. And you're like, Yahtzee! So you're balancing that. And you're saying, okay, but if we can get him, just using the Dobson deal again as the benchmark, if you can get him on $4 million deal, knowing this is going to hurt you at the end of those 3 years, but to get him at 4 right now,
right,
and then get a $5 million player out of him, but then you use some of those savings to go and, replace JT Compher when he walks next year, like something like that. Like that's the balance. You can't just be like, pay everybody, because you just will run out of money and flexibility, and you
end up being the Vegas Golden Knights at that point.
Right. Like you're just like, okay, well, we have paid all of our guys. We also continue to bring in guys from the outside and pay them too. Who wants to fake a broken back this week? So,
who's not feeling well? Who's
exactly.
upset?
Then in the locker room, you just have a wait list for bone surgery that the guys just sign up for and say, this is my 3 weeks off. So that's you have to balance those things out. So that you don't end up like locked in, and then hey, if a player's career takes a turn that you're not expecting when you sign it, like the Avs really rolled the dice with Val Nichushkin, and then in the context of Landy's deal and Lekkonen's deal, like they've really had quite a dice roll of an off season where you feel great, but these guys all just fucking want a Stanley Cup together. You love it. You're fine. You're on top of the mountain, right? You're living life. But you can also see, you fast forward 2 years where you're like, I can see where this doesn't work out, where this just does not go their way. And it sinks the entire window.
If it goes that way.
Yeah. It could not. I mean, it could look just like last year where it all works out.
It may
and
also
these guys are
an
amazing fit. They win another 55 games. They stomp through the postseason, and now we're talking about, they're chasing
caliber stuff. Yeah,
they're chasing a dynasty at that point where you're like, okay, this all went great. Yahtzee.
Nailed it.
Well,
yeah,
nailed it.
The only way to find out is to either time travel into the future or wait and see. So if you can time travel, hit me up. Let me know what the lotto numbers are.
Why would they let you know instead of just keeping them?
Look, they can win one for themselves. Give me the next week's lotto numbers. It's fine.
You gotta wait for that next Billy to roll around.
There you go. Assuming you have to live in real time like the rest of us, we'll be live 5 days a week, off season, preseason, regular season, postseason. You name it, we're here for you. So be sure to keep tuning in, like and subscribe here on DNVR's YouTube channel. That does a ton for us. We're almost at 24K subscribers, so inching towards that 100K. Still moving forward there. Anyway, we're going to get out of here for the day. We appreciate all of y'all. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, from the vault, we'll see you next time.